Hi everyone, great to be here. Thanks Dalia, Lebanani. You never cease to amaze us with the initiatives that you create. Very impressive. I think it reaches out to the right people and you know how to connect with people. I think that's something that cannot be overlooked and always needs to be stated. Thank you for having us here today. As you probably know, Cedar Oxygen, most of you know them by now, know us by now. We are an initiative that was established in September of 2020, and it was for the sole purpose of supporting Lebanese industrialists in Lebanon. As you know, there were multiple fallouts from the crisis that happened, from the depreciation amongst other things, obviously the explosion in the Beirut port. All of these led to a number of bottlenecks that were created, and the problem with banks as well, the unofficial capital controls that imposed a massive bottleneck on the continuity of Lebanese industrialists among other sectors in the economy. When it came to Cedar Oxygen, the initiative itself was in the beginning to ensure the continuity of Lebanese industrialists, enhance their competitive advantage, their comparative advantage, and to support employment growth in the country. When we began, we actually began with initially to support raw material financing, simply because obviously a lot of the industrialists, they had the capacity to produce, they had the capacity to sell, whether it was locally or in foreign markets. The only thing was their money was locked up in the Lebanese banks. So our initiative was to step in and to help them buy those raw materials, so essentially they can manufacture them and then sell them either locally or abroad. So we began with raw material financing, and as things evolved, as the situation evolved in the country and we reached out to our clients, we heard what they had to say, and then we evolved. We added CAPEX and then we added renewable energy, and you'll understand why. Now what I want to go through just very briefly is our offering. When it comes to renewable energy, we can do ticket sizes of essentially up to $2 or $3 million per ticket. We request 25% as co-finance. So basically, to give an example, if you have $1 million ticket, the client has to provide $250,000. We will finance $750,000. The maximum tenor is 30 months, and the grace period is 6 months. So obviously, it would depend essentially on the repayment period. It could vary. Some clients request 1 year, some clients request 2.5 years, and otherwise. Moving on, we also do, sorry, that was, if I'm not, sorry, what happened? Okay. Sorry, excuse me, technology issues. Okay. Okay, so raw materials financing. When it comes to raw materials, basically if an industrialist wants to buy raw materials either locally or from a foreign market, we also finance this. We can finance up to 100% on the condition the client puts a 10% cash margin in case the client is selling abroad, and if the client is selling locally, we request he puts a 15% cash margin. Now, the tenor is up to a maximum of 6 months, but what we actually do, to give you an example, to make it clear, is that if we give the client $1 million, and the client is an exporter, we request from that client to put 15%, which is $150,000, okay? Now, when it comes to the tenor, if I give that client, basically the SCF facility is a revolving facility, so I renew it every year. But each transaction has a maximum tenor of 6 months maximum, and that tenor is based on the cash conversion cycle, meaning it's based on the period from which the client makes the payout for the raw materials, converts it, and sells it, but he actually has to receive cash. So that's our cash conversion cycle. No, sorry, there was something. On the renewable energy, sorry, I don't know what's going on here, but anyway, don't worry about it. On the renewable energy, it's similar to the CAPEX. So basically, we request 25%, and we finance 75% on the renewable energy. Now, as you probably know, the market dynamics have actually helped people, encourage them, and industrialists to invest in both renewable energy, CAPEX, and SCF. In what sense? The impact we've had on the market has been multifold, if I can say. So basically, when it comes to CAPEX, the client has been able to adopt something called import substitution. So basically, they've been able to produce manufactured goods at the same or even better quality than imported goods, and we finance the machinery so they can produce those goods. The second thing on the renewable, and the second thing on the CAPEX, is that a lot of clients have turned to automation. Now that they've deleveraged their balance sheets because they've paid down their debts, whether in LBP or LOLAs, right? So basically, they're a lot more cash rich and more enabled now for financing. What they've done is that they've turned to something called automation, which you all know. And by automating their processes, what they've been able to do is produce more quickly and produce more cheaply based on economies of scale. And this has allowed them to, because they've been able to produce at cheaper cost, it's allowed them to actually export to markets that they haven't been able to export before. And they've increased their sales locally here in the Lebanese market. I can give, without mentioning names, I can give you examples of, for example, companies that have taken CAPEX loans from us. They've adopted import substitution, and it's on the market, it's on the supermarket shelves today at 30, 40, and 50% below the cost, the price of imported products, and they are, if not the same quality, they're better quality. And I think that's what you call impact. On the renewable energy front, we've partnered with, yeah, sure.
Just go ahead, keep going, keep going.
Don't worry, it's not going to add a lot of things anyway. Yep. Can I do it from here? On the renewable energy front, we've partnered with the UNDP, where they've provided a grant, and we've provided, and they've also provided technical assistance, and we're working on 3 projects at the moment with UNDP. So we've provided the leverage for a company that has sales of $20+ million. They're a manufacturer. They have the largest market share in their space in Lebanon. And moreover, this company is going to save 30 to 40% in energy costs, and they're a 24/7 operation. So it's without batteries, and they're saving 30 to 40%. And now we're going to scale it up. We're going to go into a second and third phase together with the UNDP. That's the kind of impact we're creating. Moreover, when it comes to the SCF, basically the financing of raw material supply chain finance, a lot of the companies today, they're not able to issue LCs from Lebanese banks because a lot of the constraints that Lebanese banks have is that even if they place 100% cash margin with their correspondent, the correspondent will not confirm the LC with most banks. So we've stepped in, and we're actually issuing the LCs from Europe, from European banks. And in those cases, the beneficiaries are not requesting a confirmation on the LC, so basically it's facilitating their procedure. That's basically in a nutshell. What I do want to say, if there's one thing I want to say in conclusion, because I'm a little restricted on time here, it's that if there's one thing I would mention as a word of advice from what we've learned and observed in the past 2-3 years, it's that I recommend companies automate their production processes, and they invest in the horizontal and vertical integration of their companies. Because if they do that, I think they're on the path not only to sustainability, to more permanent growth, whether it's in the local market or in the foreign markets. And if you have any queries, look, I haven't touched on the collateral, I haven't touched on the interest, but by all means reach out to us. We'll circulate our contact details. Members of our team are here, so feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you very much for your time.